On access to food, government policies are moving in opposite directions. In Washington, officials want to cut back on access to food stamps and school lunches. On the other hand, there's a campaign at the State House for more access to school breakfast, that is, breakfast after the bell. To tell us how all of these make a difference in food security is the president of Project Bread, Erin McAleer. Thank you very much for being with us, Erin.
Thank you, Chris.
I want to start with the school breakfast because I was always under the impression that, at least in the last decade or so, that has been picking up. More students are getting access to the food, and more of them are showing up to school. So
Right.
Why the need for after the bell breakfast?
Yeah, so there are a lot of schools that are providing breakfast before the day starts in the cafeteria. What we find is participation is not as high in that model for a few different reasons. You know, buses are late, or families have multiple drop-offs, or kids just find it stigmatizing to go to the breakfast in the cafeteria before the day starts. So moving it after the bell, making it part of the school day, just as lunches, increases participation significantly.
Now, some people might say, well, couldn't that mean students eating while they're supposed to be paying attention in class? So explain. I'm sure you thought about that.
Yeah, it does mean that. And what we've heard from a lot of teachers is that students pay better attention when they actually have food in front of them. Teachers have found that students who are hungry are not as engaged. They're distracted. They have, they're hungry, just like any of us. If you're hungry, it's really hard to concentrate. When students are actually eating, they're more attentive. And all the data shows that they're absent less tardy, higher test scores, all positive outcomes associated with eating breakfast after the bell.
So what would the difference be as far as funding? Or is this more about how you organize things as opposed to what you pay for it?
Right. So funding is provided by the federal government. I will say schools get more funding the higher the percentage of kids participating in. So we think by moving it after the bell, we'll actually see more funding going to schools. But yes, it's more about when and how it's provided.
Okay. I want to turn to some of the changes that the federal government plans to go ahead with right now. In food stamps, now they're called SNAP benefits. Right. One argument I've heard about this is that it's a good idea because it mainly affects people who are under age 50, able-bodied, who don't have dependents, people who, well, that sounds like people who should, go out and get a job, doesn't it?
Right. Well, that is the argument that the other side is making. The argument we would make is that the best way to get a job is to actually be full, to have food. We find that, and research shows, if somebody's struggling to afford food, then any other thing, like a student trying to learn in the classroom or an adult trying to find a job, it's very challenging to do that on an empty stomach. And so we feel strongly that people need this basic right to food. And we also know that these policies that they don't work in incentivizing. So taking food away does not incentivize somebody to get work. Research has shown time and time again that that's not proven. And at Project Bread, we think food's a basic right and that we need to, basic need, and we need to make sure it's met.
So the new rule is if you work enough hours at least, you can get some of those SNAP benefits. But on the other hand, you have to document that. So couldn't that pose a hurdle too?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the Trump administration has been doing, is just putting lots of different hurdles in place for people to access food. Historically, food has been a bipartisan issue. And, I used to work in the budget office for Governor Romney when President Bush was the president. And a lot of the policies that we're talking about now are ones that Republicans put in place to provide more access to food. It incentivizes the economy. People use those SNAP dollars at local stores. But the Trump administration is just looking at various ways to take that food away. And it's gonna affect us in a number of different ways, unfortunately.
Of course, I also get the impression that some of the people who might be excluded from these benefits are people who maybe they're technically not disabled, but on the other hand, they do have some health problems. Right. Maybe they have to go to dialysis every so often. So I guess it's not going to be easy for them. It's
not. Like, I'll share a story from, we're located in East Boston where the airport is. And during last year's federal government shutdown, a lot of employees were impacted. And there was a TSA worker and his hours were cut. So he was working full time. He was cut back. He is now trying to find full-time employment. He only has part-time. He wasn't able to pay his rent. He's living out of his car. And the one thing keeping him going is SNAP. He's able to purchase food, and he is trying to find full-time employment. That's an example. He doesn't have dependents. He's an adult. He's able-bodied, and he's somebody that wants to work more hours and can't, and is now homeless. But fortunately, through Project Bread's work, we're able to make sure he has access to food.
Well, there's also a tie-in between SNAP benefits and children's eligibility for school lunches. So how is that going to change?
Yeah, so there's a few proposals that have been put forward that will cut more families off of SNAP food stamps, and the way that eligibility for free and reduced price lunch is determined is often through eligibility for SNAP. There's a direct certification. So we know the more families that lose SNAP coverage, that mean those kids are not going to also get school lunches.
Because what's also been happening over the past couple of years at least is at least the talk that immigrants will have to be more careful about avoiding any of these programs. At least that's the message they're getting.
Right.
What do you see happening?
Yeah, there is a chilling effect of it. The SNAP program, you are required to be a legal immigrant to access it, but we're finding legal immigrants are nervous about the federal government and the policies that they have towards immigration and would rather just stay away from these programs altogether. We are really, food again is a basic need. We really want folks, if they need food, to still reach out to us, and Project Bread can support them, but we're certainly seeing, in all of our programs that immigrant families are choosing not to participate.
Because Project Bread is long associated with the Walk for Hunger, and a lot of people might be thinking that the definition of need is really having severe hunger.
Right.
But the term we hear now is food insecurity.
Yeah.
It's different, but what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, food insecurity is not knowing where your next meal is going to come from or not being able to afford to have a healthy diet. In Massachusetts, it's 1 in 11 families, 1 in 9 children. And what it means is that you're stressed out about whether you can purchase food for your family, or you're making decisions on what you purchase that are not in the best health benefits of your family, but it's all that you can afford. So it's different than hunger and what Americans might associate hunger with. It's more of an economic term.
Right. This is BNN News. We're talking with Erin McAleer from Project Bread. And of course, the other thing about saving money and spending money, if you save money on SNAP benefits, what about money you might lose down the line if you've got more health problems? Is that something?
Right. I mean, that's one of the in Massachusetts, we do allow people to save money and have an asset as part of SNAP. We know that people need a car to drive to work, and we also know to escape poverty, you need to be able to have enough for first and last month's rent. The Trump administration, that's one of the things that they're looking to take away, and we don't think that's the solution. We think people need to build up a savings in order to move forward.
Finally, we should mention that if people are having problems with either hunger or food insecurity, there's a way you can help them, a number that they can call perhaps? Yeah,
Project Bread runs a food source hotline, and so we take calls and we also do online chats, and the phone number is 1-800-645-8333.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris. Happy holidays.
Erin McAleer from Project Bread. We'll have more news in just a moment.